to this session on the digital transformation of defense. We have with us Mr. Sanjay Jaju, who is from the Department of Defense Production, Joint Secretary. He doesn't need any introduction because all of you know him and have interacted with him in the past. He's going to be chairing the session, moderating it, and also putting up some very difficult questions for everyone to answer. I am going to be assisting him in wherever possible. My name is Gurcharan Dhanjal, as it is given there, and we are fortunate to have with us, a very distinguished panel of experts coming from the government, coming from the think tanks, coming from the startup ecosystem, the research, which is the DRDO, so on and so forth, and we'll have the benefit of learning from each other, and the idea is to discuss one specific subject, which is what we say the digital transformation. I mean, we've been talking of defense, a whole lot of stuff on Make in India, and to encourage the defense production rather than just simply being the consumer, also become the consumer of innovation, also become the owner of innovation. So that's exactly where most of you fit in. But also the challenge has been that, for a very long time, we have remained archaic. I will not mince my words because whether you look at our defense production, whether you look at the ordnance or you look at any kind of, research which has been going on, that has remained within shrouds. I mean, very close to the chest, we've not been talking about. And opening up of the sector was something which was never discussed. This remained, close-chested public sector. The net effect of that is now when it has opened, the challenge is the lack of application and the adoption of technologies. So that's exactly where we have come to a quagmire kind of a situation wherein the challenge is as to how is it that we adopt and adapt the emerging technologies which the world is struggling with, and we have absolutely zero case there. Although we are a late starter, but we have caught up pretty fast. That's the reason as to why, almost like 80 plus startups, which are the innovations, they have been encouraged and they have come forward with their little contribution that they are making. And this is the beginning of the larger whole that we see as a small dot in the sky. But ultimately, this is what is going to be contributing to a great deal. But it also requires correction at various levels, which also includes policy. So we have, Amit Kaushish with us from the policy side. He has also been with the Defense Ministry and now consults with the IDSA to delve on certain issues as such. And along with him, we have a cyber security technology expert for defense, Munish Sharma, again from IDSA, to bring in an alternate perspective. And from DRDO, Dr. Guru Prasad, Director General, giving his perspective on what I just said, that how is it that we reform, not in the sense that the reforms, but reform the outlook, adopt and adapt to technologies, whether we are talking in terms of the computing or the artificial intelligence or the various technologies which are upcoming, and there is a whole lot of expertise which is available how to leverage, and a whole set of the stakeholders from the defense field. So I would stop here and hand over to Mr. Jaju for his opening comments. Just one thing I would like to say that, if you see, there are 3 questions, which is what we have put up in the agenda. Question 1 is that Indian defense sector has been dominated by DPSUs, ordnance factories and so on, following traditional methods. How to keep pace with the changing modern digital technologies, which hinders the transfer of technology. That's point number 1. 2, how to overcome gaps in supply chain in defense products, knowledge gaps and real-time information in an era of increasing user expectation and cost effectiveness. And the third one is indigenization of components under Make in India and role the artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. can play in digital defense. So let's stay limited to the discussion framework, so that at the end of the day we have concrete outcomes, so that we can document it and put this together. Otherwise it has the potential danger of going all over the place, and we land nowhere, we just keep flying. So with this, I invite Mr. Jaju to take over.
Thank you, Gurshan, and it's really a difficult task. You have the lunch which just went by, and uh, now you have got to get answers to many questions that Gurshan has posed in the next 1 hour. So what we'll try and do is I'll try and give you a brief perspective. I know many of you have interacted with me for some time now, and we'll limit ourselves to the digital transformation agenda, and because that's where things are going to have impact in the next 10 years or so. Yes, the fact that the commanding heights of our defense economy was always there with the public sectors, and ably supported by our research organization. Dr. Guru Prasad represents DRDO here, and yes, we made meaningful inroads. I mean, starting from where we were in 1950. इसको बंद कर देंगे. People can just stop talking there. Yeah. Yeah. Because 1 hour of intense effort, post-lunch efforts cannot disturb us here. So we made sufficient inroads. I mean, coming from where we were, and today, I mean, I can give you a small statistic. Last 5 years, all put together, we call it acceptance of necessity in the Ministry of Defence. But what that means is administrative approval. Out of the total 5 lakh crore worth approval that were given in the Ministry of Defence, about 4 lakh crore approvals were for products to be manufactured within the country. So things are not so bad. I mean, 80% of the stuff is actually manufactured in our country. Yes, but the fact that there are a lot of critical technologies and systems where we still don't have enough expertise. Of course, today only DRDO has trial tested the Tejas, the naval version of the Tejas, and the 4.5 version of our fighter plane. So if you're doing a fighter plane, obviously you have tried to gain control over lots of technologies that go with it. But I'm not going to talk about all that because that's beyond our remit today. We're going to talk about digital transformation. And friends, I can tell you one thing: what is gone, past is past. What is in store with us over the next 10 years? And that's why we're trying to give and it was my request to the Scotch and group and Gursharan that we should focus our energy on digital transformation of defense. And you know that because this year DEF Expo that we are doing in Lucknow next month, we have kept the theme as digital transformation of defense, and there is a reason for that, which I'll try and explain to you. Friends, the next gen war, God forbid, if at all it happens, it's not going to be fought in the traditional realms. Yes, you might still think of a submarine or a fighter plane or a tank or an artillery gun doing a job for you, but I'm not too sure it's going to happen that way. Due apologies to Group Captain Augustine. I mean, why would you risk a fighter pilot if you have a drone which can do a same job and kill a commander of a country? I mean, why do you even risk him? And you've just seen it from your own eyes a few days back. So how is digital? How is it that digital technologies? They have already transformed the entire system that we have. I mean, look at the systems that you had in, say, 1950s, the platform that you were having in 1950 and the platform that you have today. Most of these platforms have actually got completely digitally transformed. If you have a gun, if you have a battle tank, possibly they have been digitally transformed because the entire fire control system is all now digital. All the fighter planes, I think, most of the technologies are basically based on digital conversion and digital transformation. A missile which gets fired actually is moving on its own with some seekers' help, and possibly in due course, which I'm going to be giving an emphasis on, with artificial intelligence coming in with its own wisdom, and possibly it will have its own way and it will be completely autonomous, and which possibly they are in many cases. So most of our systems have already got digitally transformed. And how I look at it, I'll for the convenience of the group, I've broken it up into some segments which I would like to uh, uh, lay before you for your further discussions. And why I say that is because I can see I have a lot of my IDEX fellows who've working on future technologies sitting right on this table, and I think that is where our next generation war machine is going to get built around these technologies, around these frontiers. And my classification is like this. I start from the basics. Basics is cyber security. I mean, the next gen war is can be easily on. I mean, you have huge cyber infrastructure in the country, and why do you need to put a fighter plane if you can just inject a malware into your cyber systems and be done with it? You can jeopardize any country's economy. You can actually do much more worse damage than what you could have done possibly by having a traditional warfare. So you have the issues of cyber security. You also have the now what we call it as Internet of Military Things. I mean, which is like all the IoT devices. I mean, you can have sensors doing a job for you. You can have multiple IoT devices getting integrated into your systems and giving you a lot of data. And when the data comes in, the next gen, and as you all know, the processing capabilities of all our machines have increased. So all this data is going to help us move through the data, learn from the data, which you call it as machine learning or deep neural learning or whatever that name is. But the fact is, you're going to have machines which are going to become much more intelligent. They will be much more faster than humans are capable of. So there will be a lot of autonomy that's going to come with it. And with that autonomy, possibly a lot of these decisions are not going to be made by the commander sitting in the control room, by the machines themselves. So I'm talking about artificial intelligence. So next gen war possibly might be an artificial intelligence related war. And possibly if they're saying that the Ukraine plane was being brought down by mistake, by a human error, I don't think that's going to happen with an artificial intelligence situation, because it would take note of it milliseconds before a human can even react and ensure that that doesn't happen. But the contrarian view could be that it could even take decisions without your knowledge. It can, based on whatever data that you have fed into it, the machine will keep learning, keep optimizing, and keep taking decisions. So you have also got issues to deal with in terms of what you call as autonomous warfare systems. So I'm talking in terms of artificial intelligence is going to play a huge role in our future wars. Related to it is also aspects of what you call it as autonomous systems in terms of your drones, robots. They're still smart, but possibly they might even get much more smarter with the help of the artificial intelligence which is going to get built into these machines. So you have uh, I call it like you have drones which are beyond 6 kilometers range. You may have drones which are less than 6 kilometer range. You may have surface drones which are like robots. You have underwater drones which may even work as submarines. I mean, you have complete variety of stuff which is going to be available to you, and it's already available now in various forms, which are going to be your future war machines, future equipment. Because digital technologies are shaping up, then you will also have a huge role for augmented reality and virtual reality. I mean, even if you have some conventional forces available, why do you need to train them on your traditional systems? You will train them through on augmented and virtual reality, then which is what is happening. War games are being simulated, wars are being simulated, trainings are being given through with the help of digital medias, and that's also going to play a huge role. Digital transformation will also happen on the other side, on the production side. I mean, you're not going to have the traditional factories as you look at. And most of the factories are going to get transformed with the help of digital technologies. We call it as Industry 4.0, but that's also quite real now. Most of the factories are not going to be run by humans possibly. They'll be run through robots, or they'll be run through systems which are going to be completely autonomous. So you will also have a huge role there. So starting from what we used to call it as C4I2 ASAR or C4I2 STAR, that is a strategic electronics domain, where most of the platforms got embedded systems. Dr. Guruprasad is a person who has dealt with this all his life, and he will be able to give you much more light into some of these things. But the fact is, most of our platforms got transformed with the help of embedded electronics. But you will now have, over the next 10 or 20 years, 30 years, electronics themselves fighting it out for you. They are not going to be embedded systems, they are going to be systems in themselves. I think that is the essential difference which is going to happen. So, why we pick this up is for a very simple reason. We have already lost out on, I mean, some of those frontiers. Now we are building a gun, we are building a tank, we feel very happy about it. We are building a 4.5 gen fighter aircraft, we feel very happy about it. But the fact is, we are still 20 to 30 years behind the world. That curve is lost, that curve is gone. But still, there is a curve left. And which is that curve? That curve is the digital curve. So we might have lost out there, but let's forget about that. But on the digital curve, we still have our professionals, our software, our capabilities in information technology and digital technologies, which have actually catapulted India to, the top nations in the committee of the world. And I think that is what we need to leverage. And that is where, when we talk to, say, Big Bang as a startup, when we talk to them about some of our initiatives, DRDOs are deeply invested in some of these deeper technologies. But it's not just a question of deep technologies, deep science, deep tech, but the question is, can we do some, what you call as, not linear thinking? It's a completely fuzzy logic, fuzzy thinking. The thinking is completely what you call in Indian terms as jugaad or tweak or whatever that is. Can we create next-gen systems for ourselves by tweaking some of these technologies, by leveraging the strengths that we had with the software, in the software? Again, in electronics, we have not really done great wonders for ourselves, but the fact is, on the software, on algorithms, on artificial intelligence, on digital technologies, we still have some prowess. Can we leverage that prowess and at least, leave the curve that we have already lost and take another curve and at least leapfrog ourselves into these next-gen technologies? And which is what is happening. We might not have built the best fighter aircraft, but I think we are now in a position to build drones, autonomous systems. So I think that is what is bringing us this important aspect of how we can leverage digital technologies. And I think that's where startups, that's where our traditional industries also will need to focus and get themselves on, in terms of not just producing for our country, but leveraging that strength and producing for the rest of the world. So that is why this whole topic of digital transformation was picked for the DEF Expo. And in fact, I wanted to do this so that I can pick your brains up and get some more ideas on what we should do when it comes to taking this whole frontier forward. I'm very happy to see a lot of people who have taken interest, and would like to hear from all of you and take some of these conclusions back home and back into my office and talk to my bosses and try and see if we can shape this agenda forward. So welcome all of you, and welcome to this new, we call it Defense 4.0, not just Industry 4.0. This is the Defense 4.0, which is what is going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. So let's be part of this journey. Thank you.
Very well said, Sanjay, because when we say that moving forward is something which is what gives us the encouragement, because the future is something which is unfolding in front of us, and the glass is always half full. And whether it is India, whether it is one of those advanced economies where they got privatized many years ago, and they have been leveraging it for decades together. Still the glass is half full, because the R&D and the investments and the encouragement, the innovation, everything has to go almost simultaneously. It's also true that not that it's the situation has been very bad, but it has taken us many years. Although we have the capability, but we never took a leap to harness it in the interest of both the industry as well as the nation. When LCA happened, but after how many decades and after how many failures? So let's not talk about it. Even the light combat helicopter happened, but again, there has been a history behind it. Agni, which started as a celebrated the integrated guided missile development program way back in 1986, 87. How many years, decades have gone by, and we are still working on it in various stages of development. But yes, we are making efforts. Henceforth, moving forward, looks like the pace is going to pick up, given the current adoption of newer technologies, so on and so forth. So let's quickly have a round of introduction. Manish, we have introduced this lady I can see here. You're not on the panel. All right. Mr. Sinha, Dr. Sinha, you are the director from CSIR, come from Chandigarh, right? Group Captain Augustine, you're also a familiar face from Auto Micro US. So can we have a quick name and the organization?
I'm Sultan Chakraborty from Capronic Systems.
P.R. Chakraborty from Hyperscale Technologies.
Praveen Dwarkanath from
From?
Big Bang.
Big Bang. Ma'am? Oh, you're not there. Okay.
Hi, I'm PV Sunil Kumar.
For your consumption, Big Bang is actually they are doing a couple of projects with us and as part of IDEX. They are one of, we call them as the flag bearers of our engagement with the startup ecosystem. So he has a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm PV Sunil Kumar. I'm not from any technologies, but I'm from state of Andhra Pradesh. I'm additional AGP Crime Investigation Department there. Thank you.
He's also a very good friend of mine. He's from the Indian Police Service and I was collector of his district.
Okay.
Where he came from, so.
The world is small. Yes.
I'm Vishwa from Sankhya Labs, Bangalore.
And Sankhya Labs is one of the stellar examples of our prowess in terms of
I'm sure.
digital
I'm sure.
science and digital
No, we have had the pleasure of listening to their stories a little bit, but to whatever extent we learn, it's very, very encouraging. Yes, welcome.
Sir, I'm Group Captain PV Singh from Best Cookie Automotive, and we are a Industry 4.0 organization.
Good evening, sir. I am Sundaram from Aerospace Engineers Private Limited. We are into defense and aerospace for the past 30 years, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Jasmer, and
Where is your plant located?
Salem and Hosur, sir.
It is part of our, we have two defense industrial projects, one in Tamil Nadu and one in Uttar Pradesh. And they are one of our major players there.
Thank you, sir.
yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Jasmer, and I am from Aero Fasteners Private Limited. We supply fasteners, that is the basic hardware to most of the defense projects.
And where is it located?
Sir, our factory is at Rohtak, and the head office is in Delhi only.
And just for your for your consumption, we are the fastest growing aerospace market in the world.
I mean, our year-on-year growth rate is close to 18% right now. Right now, we have total fleet strength in terms of civilian aircrafts is about 1,000. So I think in the next 10 years, we will require another 1,000. And if we're going to import all these 1,000 and we are going to do MRO for all these 1,000 outside India, then I think God only can save our country. So that's where the role of these guys is very important. With automotive parts getting a bit of a hit now, and which is going to stay because of the electric systems coming in, I think our industry is now has to shape up and gear up to becoming one of the aerospace component manufacturing hub. This transformation from the automotive to aerospace is very critical, not just for meeting the requirement of our civilian and military requirements, but is also important for actually ensuring that a lot of these MSMEs and individuals who are employed in these companies in automotive get moved on to the aerospace. So they also have a huge responsibility on themselves.
Yeah, thank you for echoing that, sir, because that is one of the discussion points. Because if you talk of the tanks made in maybe 100 years ago, and you talk of the technology today, fasteners and components is one of the things that is being used and will be used at least for next 100 years.
Good evening, everybody. I am Dr. Chinnasamy, IPS from Tamil Nadu Coastal Security Police, in the place of Mr. Vaniya Perumal, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashish Apte. I am representing Fronius India, and we are into the entire value chain of the industry for the manufacturing by welding technology is our forte. And I'm able to give you the confidence that whatever we are banking on indigenization of many component bases, I think we have been involved in many of the projects for the Indian defense industry for the last almost 4 decades.
And where is it located?
So Fronius India, we have the technology center in Pune, and the manufacturing unit is in Austria. This is an Indian subsidiary. But the technology is like what we have been discussing. I think we have been planning to bring in the technology, make the situations available, make the ecosystem ready, so that we can maximum to many of the projects. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Amit, you already introduced, right?
Yeah, we introduced Kaushik. So, as per the agenda, so we invite Dr. Guru Prasad. Let's start with you. And question number 1 is something which is what we seek answer from you.
Good afternoon, and my greetings from the fraternity of DRDO.
You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, I will try to be within that time. First of all, this is an excellent opportunity for me to give some very good updates. In the past 3 months, we have brought in lot of policy changes, impactful policy changes that has been announced by both Prime Minister as well as Defense Minister. But I am going to re-emphasize because sometimes percolation of information also is little bit slower. Firstly, 5 new labs in advanced technologies have been started. These are all young scientist labs. We have picked up the hand-picked young scientists in each of these labs and working in 5 niche technology areas, carrying out core research in these technology areas. That is research on artificial intelligence, asymmetric warfare technologies, which includes robotics, swarms, cyborgs, and that kind of advanced technology areas. And then on cognitive areas also, human-machine interface, that kind of technologies. And then quantum technologies, this is something which the science is upcoming, and we cannot be left behind. A specialized lab, young scientist lab, to work on cognitive technologies. And then we are also working on smart material technologies. And these most of these young scientist labs are situated in academic institutes, the centers of excellences. We ourselves have created, DRDO has created number of centers of excellences in number of academic institutes, and where these scientists will work from there, and they will be mentored by both the senior scientists of DRDO and academicians across the country by a panel of experts. These scientists will be mentored, and they will carry out hardcore research. And also we engage with number of PhD students. In fact, we mentor PhD students in these academic institutes, and that's how we carry forward the research in advanced technology areas, so that we are ready when the application of these technologies comes, we will be ready. Not that these were not being pursued by our existing labs. The 52 labs already existed. Yes, they did exist, and we were carrying out research, but we felt it has to be given a special push, so that this technology development has got more research element coming in, much more advanced research elements coming in. That is the first thing. And second thing, we have brought in a concept of DCPP, that is Development Cum Production Partner. Many times what happens in defense development, it takes a longer time. The gestation period is long, and the industry is waiting anxiously whether they will get the order, and a lot of uncertainties in that. Whether they will be the production agency or not known. Many times we did not have the processes to ensure that. But now, but for, of course, DPSUs and ordnance factories, especially for the private industry, once an industry is selected, that is a private industry is selected as, or even otherwise also, as a development cum production partner, it will be completely up to the production stage, hand holding up to the production stage. It is an assured production order. at the end of the day. But production order, DRDO is not responsible for that, that the service headquarter and Department of Defense production. But even then, we have the DPP provides for that right for the development agency that we can nominate the production agency upfront and be the production partner, take the production partner right from the day one of the project. In spite of certain uncertainties in these high technology areas, we can do that, and we have set up the processes and policies. Policies have been changed, and this is something new that has come in. And whatever interactions I have had with industry is also very, very enthusiastic to participate in, especially the big ticket items like development of systems and integration of systems, which was only the domain of the big industries earlier, DPSUs, this thing. And at the same time, we have great institutions in the public sector like HAL, BEL, BDL, BML, and they are also great institutes. They have tremendous capabilities, we cannot ignore that, and they will continue to be partnering with us because they have some certain special capabilities. They have their repository of huge knowledge. Okay, huge knowledge. No, but I will complete whatever I need to convey it to the industry.
What the discussion is meant to be.
So this is not included in 1 minute.
No, no,
Okay.
no.
I will finish in 1 minute.
But just to clarify.
Okay.
Let's be all on the same page. These 5 minutes is not all that you are speaking.
Okay.
This
You
5
will come
minutes
back
is
to me again.
only an opening statement, so that we have 3 different experts answering 3 different questions in 5 minutes. Then we open the house for discussion.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for rectifying.
And I told Gurshan that I got to leave at 4:45. Another meeting at 5.
Okay. I won't take long. These are the new announcements which I wanted to this. And then another thing is our TOT policy has been changed. We have made it as if you are a development cum production partner, our TOT fee is zero, and even the royalty is zero. That is the policy we have brought. And even for others, we have brought down the TOT fee, so that it becomes easier for the industry to adapt the TOT developed by DRDO. And then most importantly, very big thing is our patents have been open to Indian industries. There will be a license with zero fee. So these are the big things for the industry which DRDO policy changes. Thank you. I think we can move on now. Thank you very much.
As far as the initial comments are concerned, the takeaway is that we are on the move, and we have started collaborating with the industry. We have started adopting newer technologies, and any challenge thereof that emanates in front of us, we are ready to take that on. Right? With this, which is the question number 2, then how to overcome gaps in supply chain in defense products, knowledge gaps and real-time information in an era of increasing user expectation and cost effectiveness. I invite Mr. Amit Koshish.
Well, thank you very much. As you just said, I think we are on the move. And both Sanjay and Dr. Guru Prasad have shared their perspectives on what has been done. There is no question about it. And there is also no question about the fact that digital transformation is imperative. It's not a question of choice anymore. But it's also a slow process. There is a 2016 report of Kinsey Global Institute, according to which in Europe, the European countries on an average have achieved just about 12% of the total potential insofar as digital transformation is concerned. In US, it is 18%. So I don't know how they have quantified it, but if the perception here is that there's a lot to be done, obviously we are not even close to 12%, which is the average in Europe. The question, however, is that if these countries are at 12% and 18%, what is it that is keeping them back? And one thing which is common to all of them is that there are differing perceptions of what digital transformation actually means. Even here, I find in the question there is some amount that is reflected in these questions. Are we talking about indigenization? Are we talking about transfer of technology. What exactly is it that we are talking about when we say that we need to move ahead on digital transformation? Basically, digital transformation would mean integration of digital technology into your operations and equipment. Well, if you ask the services, they would say that at the time of formulation of the QRs and even thereafter, even when the contract has been awarded, there is a provision in the standard provision in all the contract that if you want to improve upon the technology and so on, it is possible, you can do it. So from their perspective, and if you were to talk to the OFP or the, I was at OFP day before yesterday and we had a detailed discussion, they have a different perception from the perception that the industry has. So there is a parallax, there is a conceptual parallax, and I think the first challenge which is to be overcome is whether there is a need, there is a possibility to create a forum where the industry could share its opinion, its views with the powers that be, with the ministry, as to what needs to be done to integrate digital technology into defense platforms and equipment and defense operations. It's a question that needs to be looked into, whether we have appropriate forums for that purpose. The second question, I think, which impinges on the question that you posed is whether we have whether concerted efforts are being made to bring about this digital transformation. As I see it from outside, I am neither from the industry nor from the ministry anymore. So as I look at it from outside, is that there are a lot of efforts that are being made, that have been made, but these efforts to me seem to be slightly disjointed. It's arguable, but that's how it seems to me. The question is whether it is Department of Defense Production which is propelling this transformation, whether it is DRDO, whether within the services it is the Directorate of Indigenization. Now, who exactly owns this entire process? So unless there is ownership and there is concerted effort, there is one common sort of entity which is propelling this transformation, I think the pace will remain slow. And when I say one singular entity propelling it, that entity will have to take care of all these issues, all these questions which have been raised here. The third issue, which I think requires to be looked into, is at the end of the day, whatever you do by way of digital transformation, it gets incorporated into equipment, platforms, and operations of the services, but there has to be a buyer at the end of the day. Now, the only two main procedures which are adopted in the MOD are DPP and DPM. Now, it's a question which requires deliberation and discussion, whether the provisions of the DPP and DPM would permit quick absorption of digital technology into ongoing projects. There is a problem in the standard contract format. Time doesn't permit me to go into that, but if required, we'll get into that question. But at a forum like this and even elsewhere, we need to discuss whether these procedures are adequate, are they commensurate with the requirement of digital transformation? And if not, this is the right time to talk about them, because the DPP and DPM are under revision in the MOD, and if need be, they can incorporate a separate, provision to facilitate incorporation of digital technology. And lastly, and most importantly, this is a question that I think MOD has not adequately answered. Everything finally depends on money. Whatever you want to do, Sanjay talked about 5 lakh crore worth of AONs, but at the end of the day, you have to have money to be able to buy things. And going by the recent and the past reports of the Standing Committee, I think there is a problem there, and therefore there is a need to fine-tune our aspirations and our roadmap to the likely availability of funds and not the other way around. Thank you.
Well said there. I'm sure, this is something which is what will always be a challenge in front of us as to, how to garner money. No one can understand this better than you at your level. You have burnt, almost all of your lifetime savings. And if you don't get any further support, then you'll have to shut down and look at an alternate business. Well. So this brings me to Munish. As far as this question of technology is concerned, that it's both bane as well as a boon. So adoption of technologies is a challenge. These are emerging and emerging fast, and it's running faster than it's running ahead of us. And such challenges remain. And within that, how is it that this process can be facilitated, felicitated, so that this becomes faster than expected?
All right. Two key points which I thought I should highlight before we go forward is that there has to be a baseline understanding about that digitization is not just an end, it's means. So probably when we are talking about innovation, digitization in that matter, we primarily talk about three things. First is war fighting. Second is production and manufacturing, about your arms, ammunition. And third thing is about the processes and workflows. So innovation and digitization, when we talk about, we'll have to take care of these three entities. Along with that, we'll have to make sure that we are not treating them as an ends, but rather than as means. And another second key point which I thought I would like to share is that the gap between, or the differentiation between human and machines has eroded. So let's not consider humans and machines as separate entities, because with the onslaught of artificial intelligence, we are going to treat entire war fighting machinery as one thing, because the way machines have come into the human cognition, we just cannot dissociate them from our thinking. Machines are not just aiding our way of thinking, but they're influencing the way we take decisions. So treating them as one entity would be very beneficial for us if we are looking at the future. But looking at how can we actually surpass this particular challenge of like technology always has moved ahead of the way our institutions or the way our research has moved. But a few things which I thought would be pertinent for us is about thinking or having laid down a long-term as well as a mid-term technology forecasting plan. So which lets you know that, because we don't need to ape everything what the US does, or probably whatever the Israeli defense forces are doing. We'll have to look at our own threat perception, looking at what technologies we would need over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So if you look at the way the entire debate about this digital warfare, or what you call as cyber warfare, has come, I remember in late 1990s, this entire discussion of likely nature of warfare by 2020 was there. Now the entire discussion in US has moved about likely nature of warfare by 2050 or likely nature of warfare by 2035. So that's the kind of forecasting which we'll have to do and think internally, that what do we exactly need. And that actually leads us to one major issue which I have found to be suffering from, is about structuring of funding. So we know that which projects we are going to divert money into, fund into, what are our priorities. But how the outcome of these projects, how are we actually bringing it back into as a value addition into your entire defense planning? So if you have spent X amount of crores into a project, is it actually giving you the Y amount of value, which is more than what you had actually planned for or put into it? When we are talking about investment into technology, are we somehow forgetting investment into fundamental sciences? What about investment into wireless technologies, investment into materials, investment into semiconductors, which have actually led all the technology leaders as of now into the space they have actually ventured into, because they have maintained a high order of fundamental and basic research. Are we somehow forgetting it? Next could be when we talk about developing innovation ecosystems. One key point which I think we have always forgotten is that how do we plan to loop into, or in a way tap into, the global technology supply chains? We cannot function as standalone or India-based or India-only technology companies or technology ecosystems. A lot of things are happening all across the globe. We'll have to send some people. It's kind of a give and take relationship. So we'll have to give some technology in a way that you also accept, or you also get benefits out of it. So the whole idea is to get technology, people, processes, tap onto your international technology supply chain, so that you have a working relationship with all the key countries where technology right now, which actually are riding in the front of technology competition. Second thing is, I thought probably I looked at a document which IDEX has laid out, like probably charting out its objectives and how it works out. A few things like we'll we'll have to, when we look at future, I think we'll have to stay away from bureaucracy. Like when we talk of technology, we look at organizations which are nimble, we look at organizations which are swift, and which actually follow agile methods. And one prime example, I shouldn't bring it here, but it's about DARPA, the US DARPA, which gets quoted in each and every document when we speak about innovation and technology. So the entire DARPA is managed by 200 officers with close to 100 project managers, which lead 250 projects. That's it. So projects, it's unlike pyramid, like they just go narrow. I mean, it's not the way traditional way of doing hierarchical modeling where you have like few people on the top and then that's how it broadens up. So the whole idea is to look at very diversified and flat organizational structures which are very quick to respond to challenges, so that whatever is thrown in our way, we should just pick it up and then start developing technologies and finding solutions according to it. Again, one more example could be the Israeli Defense Forces Unit 8200. 3,000 people, all aged between 18 and 21, and mostly picked out of those people who are serving their voluntary military service. Can we have these kind of models where we can actually talk on to people who are just in colleges or probably just passed out of colleges to spend probably a year or 2 or 3 in probably premier defense research organizations or companies which are right now riding the forefront of technology for us. And what I strongly believe is that technology, when we speak of, it should be treated as transforming revolutionary concepts into practical capabilities, nothing beyond that. And just to wrap up with one point that what we are targeting here should not be a structural change, but more of a cultural change. And IDEX, what I personally look at it, is not just another agency in the MOD. I would love to love to grow it as an agent of change. So probably it will have much more widening effect on all of us who are sitting over here.
Good, thank you so much. So, that makes my job simpler and your job a little difficult now. So over to you for
So I think we've laid some ground for further discussions. Just to supplement, IDEX is currently 4 people, that's all. And we've come some distance, and the whole idea is that we don't want it to go beyond 10, 15. I mean, it's all, and and then we're all doubling up. I mean, I'm CEO of IDEX, but I have some other job to do. So we don't want to hire another CEO right now and, create a huge bureaucracy. And our whole focus is on identifying, incubating, and supporting startups, not for product development. Supporting startups so that they become business entities. Product development can always be done through CSIR labs or whatever. We are not in the business of giving grants to create products. Our job is to catalyze these startups and help them become, if not unicorns, at least half unicorns or 1/4 unicorns in the time to come. So what we have is now a moderated discussion. So supposedly I am supposed to be moderating it. So I think let's limit it because we have very limited time. The moment I see a red light, I'll keep asking you to do it. He has put his lights first. Good to go. And you can keep it very brief. I think let it be in PowerPoint bullet points or whatever that is. And just make your point. If the point is already made, then so we have the questions here. What is it that is, I mean, broadly speaking, what we are trying to do is, how is it that we can transform the digital, we can transform the defense and the aerospace landscape of our country by making use of the digital technologies, and because this is how the next gen war is going to get fought. So if we can kind of focus our energies around this, we're good to go. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Quick points. I mean, don't need to even elaborate. I mean, with one bullet, I think your point should be carried.
more recommendatory in nature.
Yes.
What needs to be done.
Yes, we'll just keep making note of it. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. I'm just going to go by this question by question. On the first question on how the DPSUs, ordnance factories and others can basically overcome the hindrances in TOT. I think one of the easiest places we can look at is, let us look at the DPSUs, let's say an HAL or a Bell who are listed. They're typically listed with a PE ratio of anywhere between 8 or 13. You take even the private entities which are listed, take maybe a Kalyani Forge with a Bharat Forge, or you take a L&T, they sit with a 23 or 25 kind of PE ratio. Now, if you would just give a very simple mandate to the bureaucracy in these DPSUs saying you need to get your PE ratio up to 25 in the next 10 years. You give them one simple mandate to that, you tie all their payouts to it and promotions to it. A lot of these problems would get sorted out. But it is by the very nature of DPSUs that it requires private industry also to set up, given that we are more nimble. So that could be one mandate that you could take up for point one. The next points are, I don't think it's an either or situation. I think if we are going to put digital technologies into supply chain and other places, I think it's going to aid cost effectiveness and user expectation rather than looking at it as an either or situation. Because I think one of the challenges in IDEX, for example, was the AI and SCM when it came down to naval expectations. When you are going to put in these technologies into defense, the sector specifically, it's only going to aid usage of this and cost effectiveness also. Finally, coming down to the indigenization of components under Make in India, let's take the IDEX project very specifically. Over here, we are actually allowed to develop these projects. We understand the requirements of this end to end. So when we are applying technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, and other cutting edge technologies to this space, we can come up with a complete solution because everything is in our hands. We no longer have to depend on, whether this will actually fit, does it have the real estate? These questions don't stay with us. And when you reduce that uncertainty, innovation propels itself. Thanks.
Just to supplement, I was reading that Baiju has got a valuation of $9 billion. I think I'm audible. So Baiju has got a valuation of no, that's okay. We're audible. Baiju has a valuation of $9 billion, and I think all the academic institutions in our country, if you really look at their traditional brick and mortar and their balance sheets, possibly you're not going to have those kind of valuations. The valuations come from the expectations of future profit, and I think which is very important. And one important significant thing that we're trying to do now is to create these startups have valuations. I mean, tomorrow he might have a company he might create a company which, if he has future profits to show for, he may not have a huge 5,000 acres campus as HAL has, but possibly he may have valuation which is much more than HAL's valuation. HAL is already listed, so you know the valuation of HAL. I don't even think that you have the PE ratio correctly worked out. I mean, the PE ratio is not even 10.
8, sir.
Not even 8. The current valuations are not so good. So the fact is, because people do not understand that, see, it's not the business of the government to do business technically. So mandating somebody to do a particular thing, I don't think that's the way business is done. Business is done because of animal spirits. Business has its own grammar. It has its own syntax. So it's better done by people around here rather than being done by the government. Hyper stealth.
So you just said artificial intelligence, drones fighting and all that for future. But we do not take in a broad sense, these are...
Speak to the mic because we are recording this.
Sorry, these are sensors only. And they can be denied access also with the technology here. So if these technologies are already developed in India in a very high standard, why can't they be given a lift? In a higher standard means it may not be today available globally, it may be available in India. Deny technology.
Yeah, so just want to supplement. One very important change that's happening in the coming week is in the defense procurement procedure. We are bringing in a small paragraph wherein all these projects which are being done by IDEX or your project, let's say for example, when you participate in the process of open challenge, and because now we also have an open challenge. We earlier had a system wherein we used to give out a challenge and then you used to give an answer. Now we are saying if you have a particular solution which you think is appropriate for the defense needs, you can just give your open challenge and we'll ensure that we create a bridge between you and the defense establishment. Now we are creating a small paragraph in the defense procurement procedure which would enable them to procure such products and technologies directly. So that's a huge enablement that's happening next week. And once that gets cleared, then a lot of these questions will get answered. I have a product, nobody wants to even look at it, but now we're creating that window and an opportunity through this medium called IDEX. Yeah.
Yeah, so coming to the point number one with respect to this DPSUs and all, one thing I want to tell why we are going digital, because it's a less amount of time. We want to do everything fast. So therefore what happened is the coordination from the beginning to the end, inclusive of RCMA as well as DGQA. That means the acceptance criteria also need to be done in the beginning itself so that we reduce the time over there. So the ecosystem itself need to be started from not only the private and the private public as well as the concepts of the project as well as the acceptance of the project. So then and then only it can be used and then only it can come out. Because I am from testing side, so we are doing it from the beginning itself with respect to the digital part. Point number two, when it comes over there with respect to gap of the supply chain, another one thing is reuse of expertise. For example, why DRDO or why don't any of the things that are happening, that these are the organizations which has already done these sort of things. For example, we have done a hardware loop simulation, we have done 39 LRUs tested for AVAX and all. So therefore what happened is, if you have a lookup table or if you have a window where you can categorize that these are the organizations who has already done, then what happened is there can be a curtail amount of time when it comes into the supply chain part of it. And point number three, when it comes to the Make in India concept part of it, is that with respect to MSMEs, it is very difficult for doing the investment. But still MSMEs are interested in doing investment if the return of investment is there, which is protected. For example, if I have done 2 years showing a demo or showing a proof of concept, after that if you go for an open tender and if you go to the L1, where the L1 is a very big daddy, then what is happening is I am losing everything. So I don't have a courage to go for a second system over there. So half of the time the MSMEs have lost because of the first instance itself there is a downfall. But we have got all sort of supports, hence we are slowly moving.
So now one good thing which has happened is in all our make projects, we have got certain categories of projects below a particular threshold which are completely reserved for MSMEs and startups. Nobody else can participate. So that's a fundamental. If a prototype is costing less than 3 crores and the overall procurement is less than 50 crores, it's completely and exclusively reserved for MSMEs and startups. So big daddies cannot participate there. That's a fundamental change.
So I'll quickly cut to the chase. I've got a couple of points and few woes, few suggestions. One is the certification process. Like we are from a drone company and the tech company, both put together. Like he said, we burnt everything that we have, and we've totally have bootstrapped from the ground. Single window certification process, if you are going to look at, that will be my suggestion, sir, because we are going to NAL, NABL, Semilac, etc., etc., etc. For an SME, it is very difficult to run around these people. A, B, it takes 6 to 8 months, the opportunity is gone. So you've developed something and you have this opportunity knocking at the door and you lost it. So that is bullet point number one. Second is export assistance. Like we got some traction from countries abroad. But what is happening is for us to go and show a demo, we have put up a stall. So if you have time, you can go and have a look. We put up a mail. So it's like 12 hours going to 16 hours. We are going to 24 hours endurance, and it is a 3-meter wingspan drone. But carrying this to a XYZ country for a MSME is going to be difficult because of the financial constraint. We are happy to carry. If some kind of SOP is given by the government, we can happily, with both hands take it.
So the huge
bird is ours.
That's yours.
That is Project Mail, yes, sir. So for which we are getting one award, yes.
That's a 3-meter.
3.6. Yes, sir. So we are going to go towards 24 hours. We have already done a testing up to 26,800 feet. We're going to trending to go more with putting a CSU, etc.
You're coming in the India Pavilion or not?
Sir, to book up
for the Deaf Expo.
To book a small space in India Pavilion is.
No, India Pavilion is not going to cost.
If you give us space, sir, we'll be very, very happy to come.
I think he's exhibiting something in India Pavilion.
So give us a.
Get in touch with us tomorrow.
2 feet space is good enough for us.
Yeah, that's what. Get in touch.
I'll fit in.
Because we have in the India Pavilion, we have created an autonomous system zone.
Sir.
And if you have something to showcase, you should do that without any cost.
And if
few things that we have done is we have export is one of our important areas. I mean, I don't know how many of you have read it. Our exports have grown to close to 7 times from what we were 2 years back. And this we have done by streamlining all, because these exports are not free exports and you need to take a license from us. But we have completely cut down all this bureaucracy and red tape. Now we have an online portal, and that is what is facilitating a lot of our exporters to export, and that's the numbers are showing. I'm showing the results for themselves. So export is being facilitated.
Now we have also given out responsibilities to all our defense attaches outside. We have close to 44 defense attaches in various countries, and most of the countries with which we have defense ties. So you can make use of those attaches, and they have been given clear responsibility not just to help the public sector, but also to help the private sector in ensuring that their products reach out.
And thanks to that, sir, we got an opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia, display our product.
And in
so
all,
some of it is getting.
And you might have noticed that we have also started to do a lot of these industry conclaves. And because, defense is a fairly complicated business area. I mean, although it sounds all easy for people to say that, look, I want to get into defense business because there's a lot of money to be made, but all that is, to be honest with you, humbug. It's a fairly complicated business area. It's a monopsony. Unless and until, and I keep telling it to all our IDEX fellows also, unless and until you have alternative plans where you are able to make use of the gains that you make in the defense technology space and able to sell it outside in the commercial space, don't try and put all your eggs in this one basket. It's a monopsony. It takes time. Ruggedness of an equipment is, and the trials and the testing procedures are fairly complicated. So, and never expect that you might even with the AON and administrative approval, to what extent they get converted into a contract and how those contracts eventually fructify in the product delivery, and the product delivery के बाद में आपको कितनों में इसमें पैसा मिलता है. So there's the whole cycle is fairly huge and the gestation periods are very high. So yes, it's a fairly complicated business, and that's why whenever you venture into an area, a new business entity, we always keep telling them you should have alternatives in the dual use category. And I think learn from defense and make use of them for your dual use businesses is the credo that.
And the third thing is about policy that is going to come out. Like we were working on a counter drone systems. In fact, day before yesterday, I was here in one of the panel for counter drone, which was DFI, Drone Federation of India, had done. January, the policy comes out that Bell and the other BDL only, they can do a counter drone. We can't. I mean, the private players can't do it. So we put a lot of energy, money into it.
No, there's no such policy. No such
policy.
There's a
policy even for the making a jammer for the drone signals and all. I mean, I think it is on. So what is happening that only Bell and ECIL they can put in ordinary jammer, and I know that they jam the signal only 3G and all like that, not 4G signals. There is some different technique is required. So I'm just adding, not only because he is my neighbor, so I am supporting him, but being a research lab, we also face certification from SEMILAC and RCA that the government can enhance, put the more.
So that is there, but there is no such restriction on anybody to, for example, even in IDEX there are, even in IDEX we have 4 winners who are working on the counter drone measures.
We are working on that.
So there's no such restriction. Only thing is, if it is a particular technology which is part of the licensing list, then you need to have a defense product license. And
that was not my point. So my point is, like, the DGCA comes out with a draft policy, put it to the environment and take environment's inputs, say for 6 months. Then come out with the concrete policy will be a better way to approach it, sir.
So that's what. So I'm not too sure about the procurement part. When you said that only restricted to Bell and BDL, I don't think any such policy is there. There's a complete level playing.
To make.
No, even the implementing agencies, I mean, there's no such restriction.
And third is that the culture of open source innovation and sharing of IP, what sir talked about. Something like GitHub, if we can make it under IDEX, something like a place where I can upload. I mean, I want to share my innovation with the world.
So that's what it is. The open challenge that is there is exactly the same.
No, I'm saying a repository, a source code repository.
We are creating a startup showcase on the IDEX portal itself,
and including a source code. Source code repository.
Let's come to the left of the table.
In fact, I just want to touch one of the most important point we have been discussing on digital transformation. So we are looking forward to a factory setup which are digitally smarter factories, and which will definitely improve our digital production capacities. And we talked of Industry 4.0, use of big data. So nowadays the technologies are available which can be like made for India, and then we go for the Make in India approach. And what I'm looking forward, definitely the second point is like traditional methods. Definitely, yes, there's a lot of thing to be done for changing of the traditional methods, and I think there is a timeline which can be fixed up for changing over of the technology, maybe from the manufacturing side, that can help the industry in a big way, and industry can play that role in a big way. Like yes, the supply chain, I am also talking of the value chain because there are many products which require a particular value chain to be supported. Otherwise the end product is not made. So there the industry can play a big role. Knowledge gaps will be always there. Industry can come forward and bridge the knowledge gaps. And yes, definitely AI and robotics. The industry is already available with this kind of features. And I request the DDP wherein, I mean, it can be given a lot of leverage, and I look forward to India as a manufacturing hub for the next at least a decade to come, wherein we have the governing production.
My request is to Dr. Guru Prasad. Request is like.
So all those requests you make offline. This is only for you to make a point. This is not a Q&A.
So it is basically a mix of digitization and to bridge the gap in SCM, supply chain management. Like we have been talking on the raw materials. Can we have a committee for standardization? Because right from the beginning we have been working on the different types of raw materials for similar projects. Some of them they wanted Russian origin raw material, and there is no logic behind it. Since the Indian raw material has also been approved, but still some of the project they insist on the origin has to be from
So
Russia.
question understood. Next point.
Yeah, that's
He will answer.
Can we have a committee for this, wherein the
Committees have met many
and
times. There are many
industry
committees, many reports.
and industry can be part of
No,
it.
actually, we are for completely indigenous raw materials only, indigenous materials only. But sometimes, I will tell you, I can understand your difficulty exactly. Sometimes the original design may be of, in your case, I understand it must be of Russian version with a Go standard. Even though the Russians are very well understand that our material is in fact not only equivalent, even better than that, then also they don't permit it because they are the original subsystem designers. So there are difficulties like that, but we are fast overcoming. That is exactly the point why our industry as well as our development ecosystem has to come up, especially in the
And the simple example is, let's say, for example, Tejas, which has come up, obviously it has gone through the entire process of certification. And if it has gone through a process of certification, that means now we have crossed all those hurdles. We might have tested our material, we might have tested our components, we might have gone through the entire process of Semilac and all the testings and certifications which might have come in. Otherwise, this product would not have happened. So to an extent, this is what I think we should use some of these things. And another thing that has happened, because the testing infrastructure comes under the defense production, a policy has been issued, and this is across all, that the entire testing infrastructure is not going to be the monopoly of public sectors. You can access the testing infrastructure, be it for the DRDO or the OFB or the DGQA or the DGAQAs. Any private sector can access that testing infrastructure at a level playing field. Yeah,
our test centers, all our test facilities are open to now anybody on first come first service basis, on a level playing field basis.
Yeah. Yes.
One point, sir. When it has gone for one certification, why a recertification is required for the same product for selling it somewhere else? If HAL is already certified or ADA is already certified, why I require for the second time when I am going to HAL for the same test setup, why I require a recertification?
So I think let us focus on digital transformation aspects.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll have a separate conference, one or 2 days full.
So we are not discussing the issues that are being faced. We are talking about your inputs on how digital transformation can be spurred.
Yes. Good evening, sir. I started in 1990 for indigenization activity. But now the Make in India thrust has come, sir. Really, it is a good move. DPSUs and DRDUs, they are helping us. When we are giving the right product with the right quality, definitely these people are helping us. Even the Semilac is an agency, they are having variety of people, sir, engineers, materials group, metals, all the electronics group also, they are having scientists. They are educating us and giving the specification. Even for indigenization, we can do the re-engineering concept. We can take care of the re-engineering, and with the help of DGAQA, right from the beginning, if you are keeping with them, automatically they are giving the approval. Presently, we are having 18,000 approvals with the DGQA and the Semilac certified, sir.
And all the DPSUs are being looked at only as system integrators now.
Yes,
we don't really expect them to do every nuts and bolts and every fastener themselves.
Yes, sir.
40% of the work that the DPSUs do is completely outsourced to the MSMEs. We have actually got 15,000 vendors who are actually working with most of the DPSUs, and they're the public sector. I think similar situation would be there even in the private sector.
Yes.
So obviously,
Sir, only one.
I will just interject here. I want to amplify the point made by Jaju. Especially in Akash, 80% of whatever BDL does comes from MSMEs.
Yes.
In fact, so much of supply chain, this thing, no, the ecosystem has come up because of that. So many jobs created because of that. So many industries have come up because of that.
And some of these companies have now become actually even the designers for some of the ATGMs and
Yes,
others. I mean, they have learned from DRDO,
Yes, sir.
and now they have actually become enterprises in themselves.
Yes, sir.
And they are now coming up with platforms on their own, which
Sir,
is again a very
earlier
welcome development.
There was no DCPP, sir. Now they introduced a DCPP. That is also good for MSME, SMEs.
Yeah, next please.
So, I am first of all very thankful to Dr. Dhanjal for inviting me on this platform. And sir, I am very happy that Mr. Sanjay Jaju has started this discussion with a absolutely right, on a very right note, giving the importance of digital transformation in the defense sector. Some of the speakers said that it is because of the necessity. I say digital transformation is inevitable. It cannot be denied anymore. It will be there because firstly, the systems which we are getting from outside, as the chair said, that it is already enabled with the all functions of AI and IoT. So here I just want to speak on the first point with my little experience in my own organization. We are a Industry 4.0 organization, Best Koki Automotive Private Limited. And what I want to say here is that it is not a one-step transformation. It can be in many steps. So as a first step in our company, what we have done, the end sensors, the end of line equipment, that is the inspection equipment, we have made it IoT enabled. And now so we have collected so much of data, and we have our own servers, and we are trying to put it into the cloud and all that, so that this data can be used for all those advantages which everybody here said, like time saving, the safety factor, which is very, very important for the technician to work on that, and the cost effectiveness, and the processes can be, the next step can be make it AI enabled and things like that. So I think that this is the way our defense sector can progress in this. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've come. Anybody else?
Yeah, basically digital technology can be utilized very effectively to increase our border security, especially coastal security and border security. I think the technology is already available with ISRO and other partners in private sector, including Sankhya. So we can quickly implement some of these things to really increase coastal security of India.
But just my question, are you not there in the India Pavilion? I could not see any product coming in from Sankhya.
In fact, we are displaying the product.
In India Pavilion? Because I had asked for some product to be... See, we are setting up this India Pavilion where Honorable Prime Minister is also going to come in the DEF Expo. And we have actually asked a lot of our companies which have product which is around digital transformation.
Okay.
If you have any product...
here we are displaying one today.
Please contact us. We can try and give you some space there. Okay. We are not going to cost you anything, but it should fall into the themes that I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else has any other point? Anything? Sunil? हो गया Augustine हो गया.
So it is mostly driven by defense rather than civilian application of digital transformation, mostly discussion. But I would like to place on record that we have automated the training part of training on law. That is called e-learning platform, and we could train within 1 year 25,000 police personnel. That is roughly 40% of them on training them on various laws. So this is one application where we could use. That is a civilian use mostly.
Yeah, no, I don't even call it civilian. See, when I say, to be honest with you, when I said defense, let me be very forthright and clear. We are not talking about external defense as it is perceived. The external defense, internal defense, used by our paramilitary, used by our Indian police forces, used by our armed services. I think most of the products, except for the artillery guns, which might possibly be used only by the forces, but the rest of all the small arms, all the technologies that I was talking to you, be it Internet of Things, sensors, surveillance, augmented reality, virtual reality for training people. I mean, all these are all these technologies do not just pertain to our external defense, they also pertain to our internal defense. And that's why that's a huge market. For example, lot of our entrepreneurs, when they come to us and they ask us that, you know, in the defense procurement procedure, it takes a lot of time and stuff, we actually keep telling them, see, the market is not just here. When we say the total defense production in the country is, say, close to 1 lakh crores, not that entire thing is being purchased by the defense. A lot of it is also going towards the paramilitary and a lot of it is going towards the police. So all these things are equally important. A bulletproof vest is not just required for our soldier out on the border. It's also required by our policeman who is fighting on the streets. So it's all these things are actually concomitant and together. When drones are not just going to be required, they're going to be required by our police forces also. So all these things are like cutting across both. That's why we call it our DEF Expo itself is not just about defense. We also say inland security is also one of our one of the sectors that we cover.
Thank you. Just to complement what you have said.
You joined in a little late. So would you like to speak quickly for?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'll just make one point that we are coming up with a product called Yudh Chetna. That's a drone guardian system, which will be an unmanned traffic management system, as well as it will be a simulation of a war zone. So we are coming up with that product. We are ready with the prototype, and we'll present it to you, sir.
Yeah, I think if you have any such thing, then you also use the open challenge, which is closing tomorrow. Put your product there. You know, you're in the line then. When
Sure.
Of course, open challenge also we have extended the last date, so you can keep rolling in and keep giving your products and ideas if at all they are required by any of the services. And in fact, when I say defense, it's also all our other services like special protection groups and all that. They're also part of the same common ecosystem.
Great.
Just to supplement what you have said about artificial intelligence. So, artificial intelligence is still in the budding stage, and if you know the pioneering car automation project, driverless cars, where it has stalled. The biggest challenge for artificial intelligence system is not to drive the car in rain or snow or fog or anything. It's a simple issue. A traffic cone standing on the road, it is very easy for artificial intelligent algorithms to identify it as a traffic cone and you have to take a turn. But for any reason, for the sake of wind or anything, if traffic cone falls down, then system is gone. The entire artificial algorithm cannot make out what is that. Whereas a 5-year-old kid can make out that is a traffic cone fell down. So that is where that project has stalled.
But unfortunately, what they will do is they will even factor that in then. हाँ, वो तो AI का तो मतलब ही है ना कि they'll keep putting that data. वो भी कर देंगे कि गिरने के बाद में क्या है तो then next reaction. So algorithm and पहले तो rule based थे ना. Now because the data is too big for last point.
Can we have CCTV cameras in the space to covering the sea and shore? Since we want to monitor the movements of the boats and
not
other
CCTV
things.
cameras. They have. I mean, there is one of our IDEX fellows who are there. They are developing actually a payload. We call them payloads. These payloads may be used by space satellites, or they may be used by drones, or by even planes. Some of these payloads are supposed to be taking pictures. And in fact, you might have seen satellite pictures of what happened in Iraq. I mean, they are satellite pictures. So it's like
Actually, it is the immediate requirement.
So space is also one of the frontiers, and a lot of space related stuff also gets digitally transformed. I think we have come to see the limited point that I wanted to tell you is that the next gen war is around. It's not just about, as I mentioned to you, not just digitizing or digitally enabling the existing platforms. As I mentioned to you, that thing is being done all the while. I mean, all the missiles that Dr. Guruprasad has developed over these years, they have half of their value is actually for items which are actually electronics and digital. I mean, mechanical engineering and all those things are all part of the missile process, but the fact is 50% of the value actually is, and the 50% of the effort actually goes towards electronic stuff. But all that was there part of an existing system as embedded. But in future, when artificial intelligence or robotics or Internet of Things or smart stuff and smart devices take over, they will actually be the main players. They will not just be backroom boys. They will be actually front room boys. You will have a drone swarm doing surveillance for you on the border rather than a soldier around.
So to an extent, that is how the paradigm of next gen war is going to change with digital technologies. But that is where we have huge opportunities available, and possibly we may leverage those opportunities and at least, be an enabler to the economic dream that we've been talking about.
So can we quickly take 1 minute each concluding remarks from you? Dr. Guruprasad has already spoken.
No, what I gather from this discussion is that industry has its own concerns. And I mean, these platforms do help us in voicing our views. Probably it might be conflicting, which government might not accept all of them. But the whole idea is to keep thinking and keep talking about them. So as IDSA, we would welcome probably these kind of discussions, which can roll out in form of reports or probably policy papers in the future.
No, all these issues which have been raised, this is part of the procedural changes which need to be brought in. But the only issue which has not really been addressed is, at the end of the day, we need money, and that's something which everybody has to look at. Nobody talks about money, but that is the first thing we should start talking about.
So that means the enabling environment and the policies being there. So that's a good thing to have. But now we need money to for the next infusion of life, which is brought to the sector. Yeah. 30 seconds.
There's a very 20,000 feet solution to that, and I've been proponent of that even in uniform.
Yeah.
Join forces together. Now they are doing piecemeal Army Navy Air Force separately. We should have one different force. A lot of money can be generated.
With now DMA coming up, I hope something will happen. But you require, what is the kind of money you require?
One bridge was defended by 3 different services.
What is the kind of money you require?
Well, so, I know that a couple of hours are just too short for reaching, the kind of discussion and the conclusions that we're looking for. But yes, we have a head start. We know all these stakeholders put together. So there are some concrete takeaways, which is what we're going to be putting together and run through you. So that brings us to the end of this roundtable discussion. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaushish and Mr. Manish Sharma. For having taken time out. Of course, thanks are due to Mr. Jaju, not only being supportive of this initiative, he also extended the government support. That's the reason why we have been able to organize this in support with the Ministry of Defense as well as IDEX. So thank you very much.